Being 7 o'clock, it's time to reconvene the district meeting, which was held over from earlier this month. First order of business, with the tellers, please give us a quorum count. And members of the audience, will you please hold up your blue card so that the tellers can count them. Teller on my left.
I said 24.
24. On the right.
21.
21. And the center, you finished?
63.
63. What do we got this? 108. Being there's 108 voters in the hall, we have a quorum.
Point of order, Mr. Moderator.
Yes?
Request permission to possibly, we have a consultant here from Pioneer Engineering, Pioneer Consulting, in reference to the water questions.
Mm-hmm. And you requested he be able to speak?
Yes.
Well, we can take care of that right now. We have a non-voting consultant here that's here to answer questions relative to the water department budget. We have a motion to allow him to speak. Is there a second? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. All right, when the time comes, you'll be allowed to speak. Thank you.
Thank you.
As we get started here, just a quick review of some of the things we need to be aware of. First of all, anyone who is not a voter, anyone that does not have a blue card, must sit down in the non-voting section. So if anybody back there does not have a card, we'll request that you sit down in the area reserved for non-voters. We're going to make sure that for everyone's peace of mind, the tellers are going to be responsible. The teller on the left is going to count the section on the left. The teller in the center is going to be responsible for the center section, since there's no one down here, there's no one to count. And the teller on the right, my right, will be responsible for the right section and counting the members of the stage, and also if there's anybody down in the bottom section as well. So there's no confusion whatsoever. Please, there'll be no photography except for the press, and we request that no one photograph any of the voters who are speaking. If the question of a secret ballot were to come up, we just want to go over what the procedure would be so everybody's aware of what that would entail. First of all, if we were to decide to have a secret ballot, members of the voters would have to come up on the stage, would have to come up to the front, and they would be required to turn in their blue card in order to get a voting slip. Everyone would be issued a voting slip that would say yes or no. We would set up a voting booth, and you'd go into the booth one by one and tear the card and put the appropriate vote in the voting box, in the lock box, which would be overseen by the officer on duty. After you exit the voting booth, you would turn your blue card in and be given a different color card, so that when we return to the seat, we would no longer be using the blue card, we'd be using a different color. After everyone votes, the ballots would then be counted, and anyone who chooses not to vote or for whatever reason doesn't come up, you would have to come up and get an alternate card because the original voting card would no longer be valid. So that would be the procedure that we would follow. As always, the meeting will be governed by the laws of the Commonwealth, by the bylaws of the district, by Robert's Rules of Order, by tradition of the meeting, and especially under the any rulings that are made by the moderator, that being me. We ask you in the vote count, if we require a counted vote, that you hold your card up like we just did during the quorum count and make sure it's visible. The entire card must be visible in order to be counted, and you must be seated as well. Torn cards or any part of a card that's been in any way tampered with would not be considered a valid vote any longer. We've already covered most of this. Last few items here. I'll only accept one amendment at a time. Amendments must be made from the floor. If anyone has an amendment, only one amendment would be considered at a time, and we'll keep track of that. Please, if you have a cell phone, I'd ask you to silence the cell phone at this time. I would ask that all discussions, remain still civil and appropriate. No personal comments and no cheering or jeering, depending on the attitude of what's been said by the folks out there, okay? And I reserve the right to curtail comments and make sure everybody stays on topic. Unlike the regular town meeting, we don't have a time clock, so we try to let people express their views, to the fullest. If someone has already spoken on an issue, I would ask that others be allowed to speak before you're given a second bite of the apple. Okay? So I think with that, we're ready to commence with the final two articles on this year's warrant, the first one being Article 22.
Mr. Moderator, I'd like to propose an amendment to Article 22 as shown in the Prudential Committee handout.
Have a second on that? All right, this is coming forth as an amendment to the original article that was first printed in the book. And what this amendment is, if you picked up a handout on your way in, there are several changes to the original budget that was proposed. We need to do this in order to facilitate the matter. The budget that was originally posted is the official budget, so in order to make changes, we have to amend the budget. So if you look through I just want to make a point of emphasis. If we pass this amendment to look at the amended budget, that will not curtail your ability to discuss any of the individual items. We will go through them, ask for holds, and discuss any line item that you choose to discuss. So just make sure that's clear, that you're not going to lose your ability to discuss the complete amended motion. But we need to amend it if we want to. It's just to facilitate it. Otherwise, we'd have to amend each line item. So with that being said, is there any discussion on this?
Mr. Moderator.
Yes.
I'll run through the changes that we've made. The proposed amendment seeks to address the concerns of the original budget, clarify some items, and lower the overall bottom line. First off, on Prudential Committee budget, the group insurance. The original budget reflected enough money to cover new employment as well as cover any qualifying event that we may need to fund. History on this line shows there's probably not a need to 100% fund these events, so the amendment seeks to make that adjustment. Second item is the fire capability charge. Cuts in the water budget have reduced this line item. There's no change proposed for the clerk treasurer's budget or the mechanic's budget. On the fire department budget, to clarify the salary lines of the chiefs, the proposal shows the actual salaries without the contractual benefit package. This represents a 2% increase, except for the chief's position, which is currently not filled. We have reduced the overtime line. This is not an easy call, as overtime is always hard to predict. In the past few years, this line has landed in the red. The original proposal sought to lessen that trend. We feel this is a reasonable compromise till the impact of other staffing changes are felt. The contractual benefit line. Here, we started with a closer look at what was being charged to that line. The original proposal illustrated a worst-case scenario. If all that were eligible received the maximum amount of benefit. With the retirements that took place, as well as the cooperation of the union, we feel comfortable funding this line, level funding this line with the assistant chief's benefits included. These changes would increase the budget $431,090.43 over the last year's budget, which is approximately a 7% increase.
Are there any more comments relative to this proposal for this amendment? Seeing no one, right? Yes, sir.
Charlie Rowley, District 4. Under the fire department operating expenses, on the same page where Mr. Barrett just identified some of the changes there, I tallied up the amount of change between the voted 2018 budget and the proposed amendment. If you just flip to the next page, it says that the total adjustment there was $10,000. But when I add up all of the adjustments on the first page, I get $13,000. So I'm wondering where there's a disparity there. And then I'd like to offer an amendment under the operating budget.
We have an amendment on the floor, sir. We can't amend an amendment.
Thank you. I can go through those to tell you where I found the differences, if it helps.
Well, we're going to go through the budget line item by line item if that's what you choose to do. So that would probably be the appropriate time to question any of the specific line items.
I don't know which ones they would be. I'm just telling you where I found that there were changes from the 2018 to the new one. And when I tally them up, I get a total of $13,000 increase, but the next page simply says it's 10, and I don't understand why there's a $3,000 disparity there.
Okay. I think this should be a good thing.
On the total operating budget, Mr. Rowley, on the total operating budget,
Under operating expenses, it's the next to last page. The second item down, maintenance operations, there's a difference of $2,700 there. Goes from $37,300 to $40,000. Then when you go down to protected clothing, it goes from $15,000 to $20,000, so that's $5,000. The next item, materials and supplies, it goes from $9,900 to $10,000, so that's $100. You go down to fire alarm expenses, that goes from $3,000 to $6,500, so that's $3,500. When you go to clothing allowance career, it goes from $21,100 to $22,800, that's $1,700. And then when you take in postage, I'm sorry, no, when you tally all of those up, those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 items, you get $13,000. But if you go to the next page, where it talks about the total operating expenses, it says it goes from $178,795 to $188,795. That's only $10,000. So this $3,000 isn't accounted for there in the increases. 6 went down to 12, I think, so it's still There's one other change that I missed, and it's the very first one. It got reduced from 6,000 to 4,000. If there's another one in there that was reduced and I didn't see it, but it's still $1,000 out, but I can't justify it.
Equipment was reduced by 1,000 also.
I stand corrected, thank you.
Yes, am I right?
Mr. Moderator, unless my hearing is off a little, Mr. Barrett just made a motion, and then he went through and identified what line items would be reduced, but I don't believe we have an actual procedural motion. I think your motion may want to be that, that you want your motion to read as what's printed in the handout with the reductions highlighted, or your motion could be to reduce what was originally proposed, $6,942,904 to now be $6,599,91. I think you need to have procedurally a motion either one way or the other.
Well, the amendment on the floor is to replace the original budget with this amended budget, and then we'll have the opportunity to discuss the line items. So I think that's the procedure we'll follow.
Okay, I understand that, but that's not what Mr. Barrett said. He just said he wanted to make an amendment and he wanted to make an motion, he wanted an amendment, but didn't clarify what the actual amendment was.
I referred to the handout as my amended budget.
Any other comments? If not, then we'll vote on the amendment that's on the floor, which is to replace the original posted budget with the amended budget that you have in the handout, which will be the figures that we work from this point on if this is accepted. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The motion is carried. Now we will follow using the amended budget, we will follow the procedure that we use with all budgets, and that is I will go through a heading, the headings, and if anybody has an issue that they want held under the heading, please signify by just saying hold out loud so I can hear you, and then we'll go through the line-by-line items, and any of those that you wish to have held, you'll also signify by saying hold, okay? Now, under the new budget, Prudential Committee, operating expenses. Salaries and wages, operating expenses. I'm in the right place here. Excuse me for a minute. Let me make sure I have the right things here. Let's see anything. Okay. All right. Start at the top again. Prudential Committee, operating expenses. Hold, okay. Committee salaries, Prudential Committee expense, annual special meetings, membership subscriptions, advertising, grounds and buildings, audit, consulting fees, liability insurance, group insurance absorptions, legal expenses, bond issues, Medicare and FICA taxes, interest and maturing debt, insured and uninsured losses, Town of Wareham clerical and administration, Plymouth County retirement assessment, reserve fund, fire capability charge. Under Clerk Treasurer, salaries and wages, operating expenses, Mechanics Division, salaries and wages. Operating expenses. Fire Department. I hear a hold. Is there a hold? No? Please, was there a hold on that? Speak up loudly if you did. All right, none? Very good. Consumables. Okay, we'll go back now and do the items that were on hold. That's what I used to do. Doing the holds. Okay, the first hold under the Prudential Committee was the group insurance absorptions. Someone like to speak to that issue? Gentleman to my left.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Bill Heaney, Precinct 1. I just have a few questions about the health plan in particular. And one is, are there unions involved with this? And if so, how many?
Yes, there's unions involved. There's 2 unions in the fire district.
Pardon me?
There are 2 unions in the fire district,
Okay.
and they are involved in the health insurance.
And none in the water department?
One of the unions overlaps water and fire, yes.
Okay, thank you. When are the contracts up for renewal?
Then the next, June 30th will start.
June 30th, FY19.
June 30th, FY19, a year from now.
That's correct.
Thank you. Are the health benefits the same benefits for each of the bargaining units?
Yes.
And who's eligible for the plan? Is it just bargaining unit members or others?
No, you have all, what's the,
Any employee working 20 hours, well, yes, 20 hours, I'm sorry, yes, 20 hours.
Whether they're bargaining unit members or otherwise?
That's
Correct.
correct. That's correct.
Okay. Is that it? Just employees with 20 hours?
That's the new ruling to be benefit eligible and eligible for Plymouth County retirement, but elected officials also receive benefits.
Okay. What's the percentage of participation? How much does the employee pay? How much does the district pay?
currently all involved in enrolled in the HMO plan, which is 90-10. Employee shares 10%.
Okay. When was the last time that was adjusted?
Maybe 3 years ago, probably.
Two years ago.
2 years ago? And in the renegotiation of employee contracts, does this body have any, I don't know, approval authority or something like that? Or is it just you guys on the stage that negotiate the final contract?
That is a negotiated item, is that?
It's a negotiated item, but do we as a body get to approve the contract or have any?
You get to approve the funding of it.
We get to approve the funding of it, but not the contract itself?
Correct.
Okay. Great, thank you. Oops, I'm sorry. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else to speak to that item? Next item that was held was bond issues. Would someone like to speak to that?
Bill Heaney, Precinct 1 again. The next two items are me, the bond issue and the interest on maturing debt. So I'd like to speak to both of them at the same time. Can I do that?
Yes.
Thank you. As I understand it, these two items represent the funding source for the fire truck that was approved last year, and that hasn't been contracted for yet because it hasn't been funded, is my understanding from the last meeting. But last year, I don't want to use the technical term schnooked, but I feel schnooked about the conversation of last year, in that we were told as a body that that truck was the highest priority on the fire department's capital plan. And I want to thank one of the members of the Prudential Committee for seeing to it that I got a copy of the capital plan, which is very well written, by the way. But it doesn't mention that truck at all. It mentions a variety of other trucks, and the ladder truck happens to be one of them, but there's 10 pages worth of equipment that's mentioned in it. But that particular truck, the one that was voted in as the highest priority in the plan last year, is not mentioned at all in the plan. And so I would like to move then that both of these lines be zeroed out because we were kind of schnooked.
You want to make an amendment to, I think we'd have to do each one separately.
That's okay.
So you want to do bond issues first?
Sure.
All right, make a motion.
I move that we'd zero out the bond issues line item.
Here a second?
Second.
Okay, the motion's been made and second. Amendment is on the floor to eliminate the $40,000 under the bond issue. Any other discussion on that?
I would just like to respond to one comment about being snookered. As you know, we've had a change in leadership, and a year ago that was a top priority. Since then, retirement, the former chief actually recommended we not buy anything until we have a new chief in place. So that's one of the reasons you don't see an order in for a new rescue truck. There's been some discussion over whether that is a priority item or would be better using that money to replace something else. By zeroing this out, you would preclude that from happening until at least this meeting next year.
Right.
Any other discussion on bond issue, $40,000? Anyone else? Seeing that no one has anything more to say on that, we'll ask for a vote. The issue before us is to zero out funding in the bond issue line item of $40,000. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. No. I will ask the tellers to count, please. All those in favor of a zero budget item under bond issue, please signify by holding up your blue card so that everyone can see it, so the tellers can see it. On my left?
I have 15.
15. On the right?
4.
Say it.
4.
4. In the center?
37.
37. All those opposed, please signify by holding up your blue card. Teller on my left.
13.
13. On the right.
17.
17.
$43.
33.
43.
43, thank you. We have a vote of 56 in the affirmative and 73 in the negative. The bond item stays as listed in the budget. Next, you wish to bring forth interest and debt, maturing debt, the amount of $199,750.
Yeah, but based on the way the last vote went, this is probably fruitless because it's the same reason for the same item. Unless you want to vote it again.
It's up to you. If you wish to withdraw your amendment, it's up to you.
I'd make a motion to reduce interest on maturing debt to 0.
May I have a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on this? On my left, yes. There's someone behind you there, sir.
Sandy Slavin, Precinct 3. Of the $199,000 expense for the interest in debt, what is it for? What specific thing are we buying or paying interest on?
The article read for a piece of fire apparatus. What was explained to the body at the time was for a rescue truck.
Okay, if I recall, it was a $900,000 piece of equipment.
Correct.
And so this, all $199,000 is for that $900,000 piece of equipment.
Yes, interest in maturing debt for over a 5-year period, yes.
If the equipment being purchased was less, then this line would be less. We would not borrow the whole amount unnecessarily.
But what has been approved by this body for purchase this coming year that you would need to borrow for? Because everything that we voted for at last meeting was covered by free cash or other sources of funding.
This was to fund the authorization to borrow of last year's meeting. This was would have been the first payment taking place.
But borrow for what? The $900,000 piece of I'm confused. I thought
For
we
a
bought
fire truck, yes.
a $900,000 fire truck.
Correct.
Emergency truck.
And the associated equipment, I believe, is the way it was worded.
So
This purchase was approved last year.
yes, I know that. I was
Okay.
here. I'm trying to say what the $199,000 for is a piece of equipment that has not been specifically identified. Is that correct?
It was identified
As
last meeting as a rescue truck.
Okay, as a rescue truck. So a $900,000. So you can't use that money to buy yourself the ladder truck.
Correct. It wouldn't be enough,
Okay,
as you
what
saw
type
from the
of
previous.
emergency rescue does the town need to purchase? You're saying we gave you the money to buy it last year.
Mhm.
What type of emergency vehicle does the town need?
Well, I guess on that score, it depends on who you ask. What was presented last year was a rescue truck was of urgent need, as stated before.
Yeah, but a place to go warm if it's cold, a place to cool off if it's hot. Yes, I understand
That is
that.
one of the capabilities of that truck. It will also house updated rescue equipment, jaws of life, airbags, all the associated rescue equipment that the department carries.
So this body cannot specifically say anything that you have $900,000 to spend, right? So that's what this debt is for.
That's what was presented last year, yes.
I wonder if we could reduce it, but I know there's amendment on the floor to zero it. I was thinking of reducing it to limit, so we don't have to spend $900,000 on a piece of equipment. So I'm thinking, make it zero, correct? That's the amendment on the floor?
Yes, this is an amendment, so we can't.
I know, I can't do anything else at this point.
Okay.
Zero is, to me, too far of a pendulum, but we'll see where this goes.
Well, to that end, reducing it could just extend the time frame of payment also.
Gentleman on my right, please.
Charlie Rowley in District 4. I'm thoroughly confused by this. If we voted last year a sum of money to purchase a truck, which we didn't purchase, what is the $199,000 being paid back for? What did we get for that?
Right now, we haven't purchased anything.
So the intention is, I believe that the intention is to purchase, at which point I would have to go out to bond, and we would have an interest and principal payment due prior to the end of FY19. So we're budgeting for interest and principal on the potential bond for the purchase of the truck approved at last year's meeting.
So the $199,750 is for a potential purchase. Is that correct? On that particular piece of apparatus?
If we ordered the truck, we would have a loan payment due FY19, and that's what this is to fund.
Okay.
Thank you. Are you all set?
I think I understand it now. So this is an anticipation of buying a truck which everybody says we're not going to buy. Okay.
Gentleman on my left?
Yes, David. David Hurd, and I too am confused. I understand the truck that we authorized last year is not on the capital list with any priority at all. I was told that was correct. And then I'm asking, last year we authorized $216,000 for this same line item. What was that money used for?
That was the final payment on the last truck that we purchased 5 years ago.
All right, so right now, we don't have any outstanding debt.
Correct.
Very good. Thank you very much.
Yes, gentleman on my right?
Dean Deacus, Precinct 5. I wonder if there's anybody on the stage that can answer which truck would be more important to the department? The ladder that we had voted down or the rescue truck?
Can you answer the question?
When Chief McDuffie put this together last year, at that time, the rescue truck was the priority. And with his retirement, the Prudential Committee decided not to move forward till the new chief, as they said, was in place. So we've been instructed to still move forward, but we were trying to continue with the capital plan with the ladder truck as well, to follow along with the rescue.
So, all I want to know is, I'm not a firefighter. I know you guys do it every day. If this body were to vote for one truck or the other, or somehow maybe bring back the vote for the ladder truck if the rescue truck doesn't go through, which one's more important? Which one would you really need? And if somebody can answer that.
The thing is that these vehicles, they do totally different operations. The rescue truck is a versatile piece of equipment that does rescues, fires, car accidents, water incidents, etc. The ladder truck has a different operation where it's more fire-based, but can do rescues. So they're both very important pieces of equipment to our operation.
Okay, I just want to know because it doesn't sound like you're getting both of them, and we'll just, I guess, vote on what we already voted on. I just kind of want to know what's important to you, because maybe we can make the right decision happen.
So Dean, if I could answer the question, one of the issues that we have is a lot of the equipment that we carry on different vehicles isn't always readily available unless you run another vehicle out, and a lot of it's aging at this point. As part of this purchase of the rescue truck, we intend to purchase the updated equipment to go with it. So it's very important to the organization.
Thank you.
Yes, sir, on my left.
Jeff Burrows, Precinct 6. Just a clarification on the actual financing. Let's say that truck, some truck got purchased in January of next year. That's probably what it would take best case. Do you only have 6 months worth of financing that takes place because of that? Or is it a whole year of financing even if you bought a truck halfway through the year?
A payment would start at some point with the order of the truck, either a short-term note or, as this illustrates, final bond.
Right, but generally speaking, it's on a monthly basis, and it's charged monthly or 6 months.
It's annually.
It is an annual charge, and it would be prorated based on when the truck was purchased, or an annual amount.
Well, it's possible, I don't know if this is what you're aiming for, it is possible to order the truck and not have a bond payment due till FY '20.
That's my exact point, so.
But if we were to order it without the funding mechanism in place, we'd be at risk of it being voted down again.
My only point being, it looks like best case scenario, you might have a truck in January. You know, so why are we financing a whole year if you're not getting a truck until January? Thank you.
Any other comments on this amendment to the budget? Seeing no one rise, we shall vote on this. The amendment on the floor is to zero out the bond issue item for interest and maturing debt, the amount of $199,750. All those in favor of the amendment, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. No. The item is lost. Looking through the rest of the budget here, I see no more holes on any of the other items on the budget. So at this time, yes, sir?
I move to revisit the group insurance absorption account again.
I'm sorry, would you say that?
I move to reconsider the group insurance resorption account.
You reconsider the group insurance item, line item?
Yes.
Well, is there any new information relative to this item that you want to bring forth?
Yeah, during the explanation, it was explained that people that are employees that work 20 hours or more are covered by the group insurance at a 90-10 relationship, and those were negotiated, I believe. But it also covers elected officials, and are they sharing at the 90-10 relationship, and was that negotiated?
Is this on the floor?
To answer the question, he wants to know if all of the rates are the same.
I know that.
All of the district employees are treated the same in the health insurance.
Yeah, but some are negotiated, so some go along for the ride? I know they're treated the same. When was it changed from 90-10 to what was it before 90-10?
It was almost 3 years ago was the change. Prior to that, it was 99%.
99 to 1, okay. I still ask for reconsideration because I want to make an amendment.
This item has already been discussed and debated, sir, and I'm not going to allow us to go back to another item that's already been passed over. We had our opportunity to discuss this when it was on hold, so I'm not going to allow you to make an amendment on this at this point. If you wish to discuss a line item, you've got to hold it, and then you've got to discuss it when we go through it. We can't just keep jumping back and forth. That being said, we'll now vote on the final number of the budget in Article 22. Can you read the article there? Yeah, you make the motion.
I move that the district vote to raise and appropriate $6,599,991 from taxation for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2018 for the following bottom line purposes: Prudential Committee, Mechanic, Fire Department, and Clerk Treasurer.
You have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Not seeing any rise, we'll ask for a vote. All those in favor of the motion as stated, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. No. It's passed. It's passed by a majority vote. Article 23.
I move that the district vote to raise and appropriate for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2018, for the bottom line operating purposes for the water department, a total amount $5,408,008, to appropriate $4,157,869.55 from water revenue, to transfer $532,745 from betterment receipts received by April 9th, 2018, to transfer $203,500 from water revenue surplus and to transfer from the Prudential Committee budget an amount of $513,894 representing the 11% fire capabilities charge.
Motion's been made and seconded.
Point of order, Mr. Moderator?
Yes, sir.
I have a proposed amended motion.
Yes.
Can I read it?
Yes, you can.
Okay. I move that the district vote to raise and appropriate for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2018 for the bottom line operating purposes for the water department, a total amount of $4,980,009, to appropriate $3,776,950 from water revenue, to transfer $532,745 from betterment receipts received by April 9th, 2018, and to transfer $203,500 from water revenue surplus, and to transfer from the Prudential Committee budget an amount of $466,814, representing the 11% fire capabilities charge.
Motion's been made and seconded. As was the case with the Prudential Committee and the fire budget, the amendment that's on the floor right now is to alter some of the figures from the original budget that was presented in the booklet that was handed out 2 weeks ago. Everyone should have a handout for the new figures that are before us or that wish to be considered now. And that's the amendment that we're voting on at this time. Again, once this amendment is dealt with, we will again go through the items line by line, and if anyone has an issue with any of the line items, you'll have a chance to put them on hold and discuss them at the appropriate time.
Do it now.
So is there any discussion on the amendment?
Point of order?
Yes, sir.
We have a PowerPoint presentation reflecting the changes and so forth that Mr. Reed would like to put forth at this time.
All right,
Superintendent Reed?
All right, yeah, we'll allow the PowerPoint presentation to go forward, and then we'll vote on the amendment once he's finished. Okay, go ahead, sir.
You're up.
So hopefully you can all see me. I can tell you right now that I can see none of you. So what I'd like to do, once the PowerPoint gets booted up here, is go over a little bit about that budget. It's a change from last year, significant. And I'd like to touch upon some of the items of why we're doing what we're doing. The Board of Water Commissioners has spent a good portion of last fiscal year really looking at this budget. And I would like to highlight why we propose this budget and where we're going, and hopefully have some discussion on this. So, one thing that I'd like to highlight is the value of water. And just to kind of put it in perspective, there's a lot of services you get in town. The water department is one of them that actually becomes part of your being. So think about that for a second. You probably cook with this, you probably bathe with it, and I'm sure some of you even drink the water like myself. It's also used for fire safety. It helps your insurance. So when you have a fire, we can put that out, and hopefully in a timely manner that actually protects your asset. That was actually one of the reasons why the fire district was actually established. It was fire safety back in 1907, and since has grown into drinking water supply. Another important thing that you should consider is that this service never stops. So think about a month ago. We had a major windstorm here in March, several storms in fact, and that service never stopped. It never stopped. So you turned on your water and that water always came out. And hopefully it was good, clean water. I know some of you still get dirty water, and we're working to resolve that. But if you think of your other services, think about electric. Electric didn't keep going, it stopped. Cable, in many cases, stopped. Telephone stopped. And if your heating system was dependent on electricity, that stopped as well, unless you had a generator. So the district takes this obligation very seriously, and we're here to make sure that we have a system that serves you 24/7. Because you can live several days without food, but you cannot live several days without water. So we understand that this is serious business. Next slide. So crossroads decision. So the district, established in 1907, we're at mile marker 111 years or 112 years, depending on how you want to count it. And in that time, a lot of change. Lots of things have changed. In particular, we have a lot more unfunded mandates, which I'm going to go into just briefly. And we certainly have a lot of infrastructure that's been around for a long time. So the commissioners would like to take a proactive step to address this aging infrastructure. So unfunded mandates. Yeah, next slide. Here's just a few of them. These all have good implications to make sure that you have safe water, as well as plentiful water. However, none of these have grants, none of them have any federal funding, and none of them generally have any state funding. So this is why it's important to talk to your senator or rep, because every time one of these comes out, this affects what your water is going to cost to you. So the surface water treatment rule and its amendments, the one that affects us is the disinfection byproduct rule. So we add chlorine. We add chlorine to make sure that it's safe for you to drink. And I'll be happy to talk about that offline. I know that's a hot topic. The groundwater rule, as you recall, back in 2007 and 2008, before my time here, we had 2 boil water orders right in July, right in the heat of the summer. We've come to understand much more why that happened, and a lot of that comes back to the aging infrastructure. What we found is that some of our oldest wells had some deficiencies that we have since fixed, but we believe that was one of the major reasons for that event. The revised total call form, we do this every week. We take, Andy Cunningham and company takes a set of samples to make sure that your water has no pathogens in it. We take, how many samples was it, Andy? Is it 7 or 37,000 a year? I don't remember the number. No, but in total, how many samples are we taking a year? Yeah, I think if I'm not mistaken, it's in the tens of thousands. So we do a lot of testing on your water to make sure it's safe. The lead and copper rule, this is just, as you can imagine, we do have a lot of copper. We don't have as much lead in our system, but if we don't provide the right pH adjustment, then what happens is you get more metals in your water, and that's not good for your health. Coming in February, no surprise, the state put under the blanket of OSHA that all towns and cities should follow OSHA. Before, we were just under the Department of Labor and Standards. What happens with OSHA is there's a heck of a lot more documentation to make sure that everyone's safe and doing the right thing. And lastly, we have consumer confidence reports. We give them to you annually. You can find them on our website. It tells you everything that we've tested and what's in your water. We tell you more than Poland Springs does. And lastly, we have a myriad of other small rules that come from the state, like the annual statistical report, that's how much water we use, as well as the Water Management Act, which has an environmental component so we don't pump too much. So I think you start getting the feel for all the work and activity that the district is doing on the water side. So let me talk a little bit about aging infrastructure. So I'm going to run through a couple of our major assets and what that means to you. District was established in 1907, mainly for fire. It grew into drinking water. 1947, we have 4 wells called the Maple Springs wells. I suspect that these wells are older than many of you in the audience. 1947 puts them at 70 plus years old. The wells are great producers, but as you can imagine, the casing and the screens are starting to show their age. we're going to have to start putting some significant money back into these wells to make sure they provide the water that you need. 1956 was the Bourne Hill tank. We recently got a report last year that says the coating system on the inside and out of that tank has failed. So that tank is rusting away as we speak. 1968, the West Wareham tank was built. That report says that the coating on that tank has 1 to 2 years left. And to give you an order of magnitude on these items, to paint the tanks inside and out ranges from $600,000 to $900,000 each. The Maple Springs wells, if we can repair them, are a few $100,000 to repair. If we have to replace them, we're looking into $500,000 to $1.5 million per well. So there's a lot of assets that you own that we would like to maintain because it's cheaper to maintain them than to try to replace them. Next slide. 1972, the Water Department office was built. As you can tell, we've been taking some proactive steps to protect that building. New roof, new paint job. Hope that building will go another 40 years if we keep at it. 1978, Seawood Springs Well 6. One of our great producers, great water quality. The well is in great condition. The electronics or electrical components are not. They're approaching 40 plus years old. 1987, Seawood Springs Well 7 was built. That's one of our best wells. We love it. Great water quality, great producer, no issues. 1995, the 2 corrosion control buildings were put so we could add line, so we could meet the lead and copper rule. Generally, those buildings are in great shape. The pumps and some of the components are reaching the end of their life. It's about 20 years. And when I say pumps, we're talking about the chemical feed pumps. Next slide. 2005, the South Line Well 8 was built. Great well. We use that a lot. We love it. No problems. 2012, Well 9 was built, or partially built. The casings in as well as the conduit to run that well. And in 2018, we're currently bidding the Maple Springs Purification Plant, and we'll finish Well 9, hopefully. So those assets will be in great condition. So what does that mean? Now you've got the overview. Oh, one other thing. One of our largest assets, which you can imagine, is the pipe that comes to your house. We have just about 170 miles of pipe. A little over 55 is public, the rest is private. There's really 2 pies on this if you want to look at it. So the right pie is the pipe that was built from 1920 to say 1979. That pie, if you want to put a midpoint of the pipe, is somewhere around 1950 to 1960. The second pie is really everything that was built in the 80s up to today, and that pipe's in great shape. But the pipe from 1950 is not in great shape. And again, to put an order of magnitude of what this is, it's $1 million a mile to replace pipe. So if you do the math, $1 million for 170 miles is $170 million. So the commissioners are seeing we do have a wave that's coming, and we're trying to prepare for that wave. We don't want to get in a point where you lose half of your pipe, worst case scenario, and then you have a big bond or a big payment to replace all this stuff. What we want to try to do is do it a little bit at a time. So that's why we had a cost of service study done. Basically, we're looking at our assets, we're looking at our operations, we're looking at the rules and regulations in the water treatment plant. So what is it going to cost us to run the system? The last study was done in about 2000, right in the turn of the century, if you will. The commissioners have seen this pending wave that's coming, so they started increasing the rates about 3% a year back in 2011 to try to ease the transition before my time. But the commissioners actually have foresight, and so they're trying to make the steps to move forward. The long and short of that study, which really focused more on the vertical assets, so that's our tanks, our wells, the treatment plant. The recommendation out of that study was to raise the revenue to $5.655 million. So that's where we're going in the next few years, is to try to reach that target to meet some of these needs. So what does that mean to you? So I've thrown out all these numbers and age and, factoids. Everybody wants to know what the cost of their water is going to be. So I've tried to put this here in the next slide. So we bill right now every 6 months. And the reason why I show all this information is because Matt in the Wareham Week had published this, so I wanted to show you where these numbers were coming from, and I can show you where they're going since the votes from last April 9th. So we bill every 6 months. I've used 5,000 cubic feet of water. To give you a feel, that's our 80 to 85 percentile of our users. So you ask, why did I use 80 to 85 percentile? And not 100%, because some of those are outliers. So if someone had a leak or if someone had irrigation, we didn't want to include what the highest users were per se. What we wanted to do is get the typical residential user. So keep that in mind. This is the 85th percentile, okay? This is going to cover just about everybody in this room 9 times out of 10. So it's conservative. Based on what we would charge today, and rates today, that would be $193 for 6 months, okay? Now, if I took 5,000 cubic feet, which is just under 38,000 gallons for 6 months, that works out to a half a penny a gallon. So think about that. When's the last time you've been able to buy anything for a half a penny a gallon? When I was a kid, I can remember buying penny candy. I'm not sure you can even buy candy for a half a cent. So the cost of service said, in order to address some of these vertical infrastructures that we need to address sooner, the recommendation was to increase this $39.79 for 6 months. The water purification plant, which was a bond, actually several bonds, we're recommending $36 for this year and $36 for fiscal year 20. We did in April 9th come in and recommend AMR to help budget, and I'm going to go over why we recommended that. That got voted down, but if it were voted in, that would have been an additional $24 for a 10-year bond. So the total 6-month bill would have been $293. If you want to put that in a monthly basis, that would have been $48.83, or roughly $16.67 more per month than it was before. Again, if you want to ratio that, that would be almost a little over 3/4 of a cent per gallon. So how does that compare with everyone else? So next slide. What we like to do is at least use what everyone in the eastern Massachusetts is charging for rates as comparison. There's 2 studies that come out. In 2017, Time Bond did their water rate study. MWRA has an advisory board, and they did their study in 2017. So if you look at those, and those are online, anybody can look at those. The average water bill was $526 for Time Bond. For the MWRA communities, it was $534 for a year. So how does that compare for us? The district's rates without AMR would have been $536. If we had AMR, it would have been $586. And just as a side note, I put this in that 71% of the utilities in Massachusetts have already moved to AMR. We're one of the last communities that still get our billing every 6 months. So I have 2 people always going out and reading and getting billing. So the budget, how does that look? So I've given you the cost as it looks for you. What this budget looks like here is as shown. So there's some basic items that I want to show where our money's coming from so it's clear to you, the voting public. We have a betterment debt. So a lot of people may not know what a betterment is, but there are sections in town that wanted to connect to the district and receive water. They received a betterment for that pipe extension, and that betterment, whatever the project was split up between those residents, and they essentially get a bill from the town once a year. Is it twice a year or once? Twice a year? Twice a year to pay that betterment. So it's basically, it goes to the town tax collector we get the money that comes in and we apply it to our debt. It doesn't get applied to everybody in the district, only to those that had the betterment. There's a fire capability fee. So what we do is we take a percentage of our budget, not including betterment, which is 11%, and this money comes from taxes. Why did we do this? We do this is because our system, if we didn't have a fire suppression capability, would be much smaller. So in order to provide that fire capability, pipes have to be bigger, tanks have to be bigger, pumping has to be bigger, so that you have that instantaneous demand, so we can give you 1 to 2 to 3,000 gallons a minute to put out your fire. If you look at the next slide, next row, it's the required water revenue. So this is just the revenue to make the proposed budget, which was 4.9, in round numbers, $4.98 million. So that's a big increase from last year. We would acknowledge that. When we did this cost of service study, what I want to highlight is that it included the cost of the treatment plant. Okay, so the treatment plant operational costs as well as the treatment plant bond is not here yet. The commissioners are asking you, the public, to approve this budget with the rates that I just showed you, and if that occurs, there's potentially in fiscal year 19 additional surplus in the order of $670,000. So that looks like a lot of money. The hope is to take that money, if it comes in, and apply that to the future so that we can start addressing some of these asset needs that we have to take care of, like the wells, like painting the tanks. I was talking to Doug Gardner about this, and a good thing about this is it's always cheaper to pay things in cash if we can raise it than do it in debt. So every time we take out a bond for, I said, was it 20 years, Doug?
20 years, 5%.
Yeah, if you take a bond at 20 years at 5% and you pay that over 20 years, you pay almost twice the cost of that project just in interest and a loan, right? So if it's $600,000 to do something, you would have paid $600,000 in interest. So what we want to do is try to start building up that cash so we can do some of these major projects and not have to bond it. So a breakdown of some of the big increases in your handout. I'm just going to highlight the ones that are say 10,000 and over, because I know there's a lot of questions on those. So the water treatment plant was the bond. We went over that already. The AMR, and this was under our debt payment, we had proposed $2.5 million bond in April 9th. That was voted down, so that means that line item was reduced by $370,000. So you should see that on that line item was reduced. Now I'm just going to stop here just for a second because this is educational, and we're going to come back to this hopefully next year or the year after, depending on how things go. So why did the commissioners propose to you to do AMR and AMI, the automatic meter reading system and the associated infrastructure? So here's some numbers that I'm throwing out to you. Over the last 2 years, we've had 40 water bill abatements. So 40. That bill, when it comes into abatement, is either in the range of $300 to $8,000. The average bill is about $1,000. So this is someone who had a break, a runny toilet, or any number of different things that went wrong. It doesn't take you long right there. If you were one of these unfortunate folks, you could have paid $500 over 10 years, had the information, had the alarm go out, and stop that from happening. If you were not, then you take your chances, and when that happens to you, then you have to come before the board and ask for an abatement. I didn't include, and this was before my time, and I don't know, when was the big freeze, John? When we had everybody freeze up? Was it like 5, 6 years ago? 10 years? 2. Well, before my time, I've been told that at 1 year we had such a freeze that a large percent of the town froze, and we were out trying to thaw out the services. As you can imagine, that was not a good year. A couple other numbers just to keep in your head. We put out about 30 door knockers every month. So people that don't pay, we send out a door knocker saying you're going to get shut off if you haven't paid. And part of that comes in that this bill comes out every 6 months. So people don't know how much they used until 6 months into their usage. So if you do 30 times 12 months, that's 360. I have, say, 20 a year in abatements, that's 380. And then I have payment plans. So I have people that haven't made it on their bill, so we put them on a year payment plan, and we have 50 to 100 of those every year. So if you take 400 as a round number of accounts that are asking for one of those three things, in 10 years, that means half of you, assuming there's no repeats, which there are, would have asked for one of those three abatement requests. Either a payment plan, abatement request, or a door knocker. So what we're trying to get away is in a more equitable way so that you know what's happening to your water before it's too late. So we'll come back to that hopefully next year or the year after. A couple more slides, real quickly. The technician's line item, I apologize, I know I have a line item here, it's not shown on your spreadsheet, but if you look on the very top, there's a technician's line, so the title is right in each one. That increased basically because I have a retirement coming, and there's going to be about a 6 to 8 months overlap. The service contracts increased, and it looks big on the line item because we carried $50,000 to rehabilitate and maintain the wells. If you recall, the last 2 or 3 years, I've been trying to get this money. I've asked for the money to come out of surplus. So since this is looking like it's going to be a reoccurring theme, the appropriate thing is to put that in a line item, so it's accounted for now. Another large increase that you'll see is under building and grounds. And again, this gets back to our vertical infrastructure. There's five things that have been budgeted there. Historically, I've spent, since I've been here, about $15,000 a year. This year, that went above that. I think I'm going to be closer to 20 to 25. And these are things like heaters that break, doors that need to be replaced, what I call the mundane things. ABC disposals are trash, that's $1,000. And then we're targeting 3 systems to be replaced. The heating system in the garage failed this winter. It is up and working now, but it's on its last lifespan, so we'd like to replace that heating system. The Seawood Springs roof, which is the corrosion building out in the well field. We had that inspected last year, and that was estimated to have 2 to 3 years of life left on that shingles. And the last one is the garage doors as well as the door in the attic. These still work, they're fine. We have an incentive from NatGrid to try to replace them. So we'd like to take advantage of that if we can. Technology and GIS was another large increase. So the district has what we call a computer maintenance management system. This is where all our records are kept. It's the brains of the system, it's the history of the system. It's where I'd like to start doing more automation where we can start tracking when we do things so we know when we have to do them again. So I can start doing mobile work orders so that the guys can get a work order, get it in, log it, and then we'll know when we'll have to do it again. So there's 2 parts of that. One is just for the software itself as well as technical assistance. The second part of that, which is the $52,000, is we have an older system that doesn't allow us to forecast our needs for replacement. So what do I need to replace and how much is it going to cost? So we're going to transition from a system that's ViewWorks now. We hope to go to another one that's going to be more integrated with our water model as well as how we're tracking what gets done and when it gets done. So the $52,000 is a one-time fee just to make that transition. Consulting. There is an increase in consulting. The reason why is we did get the GAP grant for solar. So we did get the $180,000 from the state. However, because of the cost of that, we have to go out as an RFP. So we've carried that cost to make that happen. The last 2 line items that have increased, or at least significantly, the groundwater monitoring and well testing. We have a wellhead protection program, which we discussed at length last year. As you recall, we had proposed the treatment system to remove the residual synthetic organic compounds that are periodically found in our water, not at high levels. That was moved for further study, so what we've budgeted is money to continue that wellhead protection program. Legal fees. Last but not least, in this day and age, legal fees have gone up. We've increased that number to be in line with historical cost. If it looks like that doesn't continue, we'll reduce it over time, but right now that was increased by, I think, 20,000, if memory serves me correct, to cover legal costs that we've been facing over the last few years. So with that, I'll be happy to take any questions.
Well, before we take any questions on this, we have an amendment on the floor to accept the amended budget that was presented by the Water Department. So if we have any discussion on that, we'll do that first. Once we've either accepted or denied that, then we can go back, and if you have any individual questions relative to the presentation or any line item, then those questions can be asked and discussed in full at that time. Yes, sir.
Just take what I believe is a correction. The motion you made was for $4,980,000 and change, and your presentation and your paperwork illustrate $4,979,559. I believe that is the correct number.
Yeah, the latter number you stated is correct.
No, not until not unless the amendment passes. Just
Okay, seeing no one rise to discuss this, we'd like to vote on the amendment as presented. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, say no. Amendment is passed unanimously. Okay, now we'll go back to the budget as we did with the other budget as well. I will read the major headings. If you have any hold on any of these, please signify by saying that out loud, and then I will go through the individual items to decide or to see which ones are the ones in question, okay? All right, first of all, Water Department, salaries and wages. Consumables. Purchases of services. Other charges and expenses. Insurance and benefits. Liability insurance. Bond issue expense. Interest and maturing debt water. Group insurance. Medicare FICA, audit, water reserve, interest and maturing debt, betterments, Plymouth County Retirement Association, Town of Wareham Clerical and Administration, total insurance and benefits, salaries and wages, consumables, services and other expenses, insurance and benefits. Okay, we have one hold. Are there any other holds before we get? All right, only one hold. It's under insurance and benefits, group insurance. Would someone like to speak to that item?
Mr. Moderator.
Yes, sir. Would you identify yourself, please?
14 Corey Drive, Bob Paulides. Under group insurance, it's the same question I had previously. Are these negotiated benefits with the employees? And does it also include the commissioners? And what is the rate?
Can you answer the question?
Yeah, it's the same situation with the with water employees and fire department, yes.
90-10?
Correct.
In the elected officials aren't negotiated?
All the employees are treated the same.
Okay, so since they're not negotiated, I make a motion to amend the health insurance ratio for the elected officials to 50-50 instead of 90-10.
Seconded.
I don't,
Mr. Moderator, point of order.
yes, sir, please. Point of order?
Is District Council here tonight?
Pardon, just step close to the microphone.
Is District Council here tonight? Do we have a counsel, lawyer, attorney, Esquire? She was just...
I'm sorry, sir, I didn't hear what you said.
Does the Wareham Fire District have its legal counsel in the meeting tonight?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. I believe this to be correct, but you can't, whatever you negotiate for one bargaining unit, whatever the highest rate is, it's one for all. So if we had 15 bargaining units, what you negotiate for the highest bargaining unit, whatever that number is, so in this case it would be 90-10, you have to give to all. I don't believe by Mass State statute that you can cut that. I believe that is correct. I can't quote the statute, but I believe everybody has to be treated equally.
The one exception to what he says bargaining units. That would be the employees who are in units of union. The elected officials aren't a bargaining unit, and they're going along for the ride. So I still take my motion and I accept your, I think you're an error.
I said bargaining units. I meant anybody who's eligible to take part in health insurance.
Sir, I believe what you're trying to do is reduce the percentage for some of the members of the district who receive health benefits through the district. And I believe from what's being said that it's not possible to have the negotiated bargaining unit receive, in this case, 90-10, and to reduce another part of the district who's being served by the insurance to a different number. So if that's the case, then your motion would be out of order.
Yeah, well, that's presuming what you said is accurate, and I doubt that.
Well,
but that's where it stands.
any other questions? Yes, sir.
Mr. Moderator, Bill Heening, Precinct 1. I just have overall questions, but not about any specific line.
Well, we said we'd take questions relative to the presentation, so yeah, go ahead, you can ask a question.
Okay. It seems as if, and I don't know that this was clear to everybody, but the presentation calls for about $4.98 million worth of expenses to be approved by this body, but also is going to generate in revenues $5,663,000, which is an increase over the prior year of about $780,000. Expenses went up about $390,000. That difference is going into surplus. It's like taking the money from the ratepayer and putting it into the bank account of the water department. And I think it should be clear to the ratepayer that that this year the water department generated, without the increased rates, generated about $780,000 worth of surplus before. It's sitting on $1.7 million in surplus before we used it to take some previous articles out of surplus. It's still sitting on about $1.2 million. And so my question is I'm not even sure it's a question, but my plea to the body is to use a reasonableness test and how much surplus is reasonable if they can generate, theoretically without a rate increase, if they can generate $700,000 and now they're going to generate another almost 700,000. So we're talking about a lot of money, and I think the body needs to know that. The unfortunate part of all of this is that the setting of the rates is in the sole authority of the water commissioners. And so we could cut this budget if we chose to cut the budget, but that doesn't cut the water rate at all for those that are actually paying the rate. So the only impact on those of us in the audience and other ratepayers is going to be zero, no matter what we do with this expense budget. And unfortunately, the only way that this can be resolved, if you don't want to have the 52% increase in your water rates, is to vote the budget down in its entirety, and in effect give the water commissioners 60 days before the July 1st start of the new year, 60 days to reconsider their rate increases, and come back to us. We would have to come back and approve the budget at that point, but to come back to us with that. So keep in mind that you know, whether we cut some insurance rates or anything else, it has no impact on us. It's not like the Prudential Committee budget and the fire budget, where you're raising and appropriating a tax rate. This has a separate set of revenues that are totally independent and not within the purview of this body. So, thank you.
Any other comments?
Mr. Moderator,
Yes?
may I respond to that?
Yeah, sure.
So I'd like to say thank you to Bill, because I've been talking to Bill the last week and into the weekend, and he's asked some really good questions. So I'd like to respond to some of those. So what's reasonable, which is a great question to ask on surplus. We borrow money. So we have a rating when we borrow money. It's Standard & Poor's and usually Moody's. What they say is what we should have for surplus, depending on which one you believe, is somewhere between $1 and $5 million. That affects our rating for what we borrow. If our rating goes down, for us to borrow, it costs us more. The other key to that is, you know, your ability to raise revenue as well as what your debt is. And I know John O'Brien is a big proponent on keeping debt down, which he's right about. Right now we have a debt that's somewhere, and I don't have the exact number, it's $5 or $6 million. So we have a significant amount of debt, and historically what the district has done, per the voters, is instead of funding things beforehand, is wait till something breaks and we'll fix it afterwards. And it goes back to my original point, is if we save for it before, then it's going to cost us less in the long run. So that's the only point that I have.
Okay, thank you. Yes, sir, my gentleman on the left here.
Yeah, Mr. Moderator, to follow up on what the previous speaker indicated, he said that the rates are going to go up 52%. Is that right, according to your numbers on the increase in the rates?
Now that the AMR has been eliminated for this year, it's less.
What would that be?
If I remember correctly, it's in the 35 to 40% range.
Okay, 35 to 40% rate.
Yes, sir.
But the budget went up about 8 to 9%.
Correct. Well, whatever the percentage is.
Yeah, it's 8 to 9%. So
yes.
Following up on what he said, I said, based on what he says, I think our only solution is to vote the budget down and have you guys come back with a 10 or 12% increase in water rates. Thank you.
Yes, gentleman on my left.
Good evening, Alan Slavin, 36 Oak Street. I need a little help. I'm a little confused right now. Elected officials, I don't believe, are any kind of bargaining unit. Normally, if you look at the House and Senate, state of Massachusetts, they vote their own pay raises, etc. So my question is really simple. When and how were the $5,000 stipends or salaries for the water commissioners in the Prudential Committee, how was that done? Was it done by this body, or was it done by the actual commissioners themselves? It would be the same question for the insurance. Because people are asking a question and we have no answer as to how it was originally started. I'd like an answer.
Salaries were voted by this body, and the group insurance proportions were also back in the mid-'80s when it was first offered to the employees, a rate was set, and then, like I said, 3 years ago, we, through collective bargaining, went to the HMO.
My question is, if this body originally authorized the $5,000 salaries that are there, this body should be able to put a hole in those and remove them if they want to then. Because it was not done any other way except by this body. So this body can take a line item and reject it anytime they want. Thank you.
Any other comments? Seeing no one rise, we'll vote on Article 23. The Water Department budget. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. No. It's passed by majority vote. That, ladies and gentlemen, is the conclusion. Yes, sir.
Just a procedural question, if I may. In the previous vote by the Water Department, they asked to take the fire capability charge away from the Prudential Committee, as I recall their motion, and put it in the Water Department's budget. But when we voted for the Prudential Committee, we voted including that particular item. Do we need to amend the Prudential Committee's budget to reduce it by the $466,000?
Can you answer the question?
The $466,000 that you see in the Prudential Committee's budget gets transferred to the Water Department after the meeting. So the number that we voted for the Prudential Committee on that, on the amended budget for the fire capability charge for $466,814 is also the amount reflected in the motion for the Water Department.
So that the amount of money which I believe Mr. Barrett quoted as $6,599,000 does not include that $466,000?
It does include it.
It does. Well, doesn't it need to be taken out of there then?
No, because you're voting to, the Prudential Committee funds a portion of the Water Department budget.
It's an expense on the Water Department, on the Fire Department side, Prudential Committee side, it's a revenue source on the Water Department side. That's why
Then I'll ask the question of the Water Department. Does your total budget include that amount of money? It seems to me that we've got a double figure here somehow, unless I'm not hearing it right.
So we, out of the 4.9 million, the 466,000 is part of that number.
perhaps it'd be helpful to reread the motion.
It's already been passed.
You want me to read the whole motion?
Patrick. Can you,
Point of order. Mr. Moderator, point of order. We've already passed this article. Discussion's over. Let's end the meeting and move on.
That is correct, sir.
Thank you.
I will entertain a motion to adjourn. So moved. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much for coming.